I know, you're wondering, what are the best early constellations I can be picking up for free in Genshin Impact? Should I even try to get any of my characters Constellation 1s or Constellation 2s, or should I just get someone I already have at C6 so I gain the item that I can use to level 95 or level 100 level break one of my characters? I'm gonna solve that for you. What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Let's get rated. First ones I'm gonna be touching on are gonna be the ones that, well, you're just gonna be picking them to get that item so you can get level 95, level 100 periodically on your account. These characters are basically going to be the standard banner characters, so Keqing, Mona, Chi-Chi, Jean Diluc, as well as our girl Dea and Tignaria as well. So all of these characters can kind of just get thrown up in here. They are the original ones, and we want to touch on Mona for a second as well, because she does have a little special place in here. So Mona is someone that you could think about getting Constellation specifically 1 for, and that is because her Constellation 1 was changed to also increase lunar charge damage reactions as well. So if you don't have Constellation 1 Mona and you're watching this video, you know, later on, and there's a bunch of lunar charge reactions roaming around, and you see that C1 Mona is some of the best teams that you can use as a Hydra support. This is someone that you could think about specifically for Constellation 1. However, if you do pick Mona, you do run the risk of one day just getting her as your off banner. And if you're already C1, going from C1 to C2, C3, C4, C5, like none of these are all that crazy. C4 could be fine, but if you're going from C1 to C2, you don't really feel all that great. You'd rather go from C0, right, lose that 50-50 and get the C1 Mona Constellation for free. So these ones really, guys, I'd be avoiding. But other than those, we do have some good ones where both the C1 and the C2 are well worth it. And a character I think that reigns supreme up in here is going to be someone like Shenhe. Now, Shenhe C1 and C2, which I both have, are pretty great here. So you're able to use her elemental skill one additional time, which is pretty big. It's going to help you get those buffs off with her Icy Quill stacks. It's going to help you choose to both do the damage bonus variants of either the press or the hold if you so desire, or throw them both up nearly at the same time. It helps your rotation that way, helps you pump out that Icy Quill damage. And then Constellation 2 is also pretty good as well, as it does allow the Divine Maiden's Deliverance to last 6 seconds longer. And it's going to give you a little bit of cryo damage crit damage increase of 15%. It's really about the Divine Maiden's Deliverance lasting longer. The crit damage is pretty cool, but getting this 6 seconds lasting duration increase from 12 to 18 seconds almost makes this a 100% uptime elemental burst, which is pretty great. So with that being said, we are going to be putting our girl Shenhe up in the both C1 and C2 category. Are well worth it. Now, a Constellation 1 that I really like, and maybe a Constellation 2 as well, is also going to be another cryo character. I have this character at Constellation 6, but Ganyu, if you're a friend of Ganyu, Constellation 1, allowing the Frostflake to reduce the cryo res by 15% is very nice. It also is going to give you a little bit of energy regeneration, which isn't the big deal here, but the cryo res down is nice as both a main DPS or like a secondary cryo character in a cryo focused team. Cryo resistance down shred is very important on a Constellation 1. Constellation 2 getting an extra charge of your elemental skill is pretty nice as well. It's going to help some energy regeneration in some teams. It's going to give you a little bit of taunt, which doesn't matter all that much, but it also is going to increase the cryo application and help out certain rotations in certain teams with the second use of Trail of the Keelan here. Now, another constellation that we could talk about here is if you're at C5, all right, and you want to get the C6 Ganyu, the gameplay style is entirely different at Constellation 6 Ganyu compared to anywhere 0 through 5. And this is because, well, using your elemental skill is going to give you a basically insta charge Frostflake arrow shot within the last 30 seconds of you using that elemental skill, and it kind of turns her into like a quick swap. Use your skill, use a fully charged arrow, swap her back out, do some other stuff, swap her back in, use a skill, use a fully charged arrow, and elemental burst. You're basically able to swap her in every time you go through your elemental burst rotation and get at least one, if not two, fully charged Frostflake arrows off your Ganyu for like an extra like second or 2 seconds of rotation increase to get those insta charge shots off with your Ganyu. So if you're also C5, Ganyu could be someone that you could think about, but for most details, we're going to put her just at, I think just the C1 is the big one there. If you're in that rotation, you want to get that extra elemental skill, the C2 could be good as well. But mainly her C1 is where a lot of her stuff is baked into having a lot of power. Now, someone who is definitely way better at Constellation 1 is none other than Hu Tao. I have a C3 Hu Tao, and I can tell you a little bit about the C2, C3 changes. This was fun back in the day, getting, you know, the extra levels on Guide to the Afterlife for that HP to attack conversion ratio is funny. It's a little bit of damage increase, and the C2 doesn't really do all that much for you, but the Constellation 1 is such a quality of life change, and it also allows you to use the dash cancel, charge attack, NAC1 charge, right? Combination over and over and over, because it's going to make your charge attack absolutely free when you're within the buff state of your elemental skill. And this is a game changer for Hu Tao. It makes you more survivable. You don't have to go through the jump animation cancel. You can just do the double dash, do one jump, do double dash again. It's a phenomenal constellation, and it is definitely something that you should pick up. And I would say by far, if you're looking for a pyro DPS, you don't have one yet, you're looking for some nice vaporized teams or any sort of Hu Tao based team, she still does a lot of work out there, especially with her Constellation 1, and she might be like the character to pick if you're looking for a C1 from this batch of characters here as well. Now, another character we do want to touch on here that is available and probably will have a couple of good constellations with the launch of Lauma coming up is going to be none other than Nilou. Now, Nilou has a couple of good constellations as well. If we can find her in here, maybe we should throw them all up together. She should be like right here. Here we go. Now, the first two constellations for this girl, Dance of the Waning Moon and Starry Skies, their Flowers Rain. This first one here is going to increase the luminous illusion damage by 65%, but most importantly, also increase Tranquility's aura duration by another 6 seconds on her dance. In the Constellation 2 here is a pretty big one, as it's going to decrease Hydro Res and also decrease Dendro Res of opponents that are triggered and hit by bloom reactions, which is absolutely astounding. Both these constellations are quite nice, and you really can't go wrong with, even if you just get C1 this time and then get C2 the next time, if you're in this sort of bloom team, you want to be doing bloom damage. And remember, if you're able to increase character levels from 90 to 100, we're also going to be getting pretty big reaction damage bonuses for some of the elemental reactions there, including something like Bloom. I think it's like 40-30% damage increase going from 90 to 100 for some of these reactions. That Nilou could get a big resurgence here, especially if you're getting, you know, C1 or C2. So we're going to put her in the top tier ranking for both the C1 and the C2s. Are well worth it if you want to. And remember, this is just C1 and C2 worth it. Doesn't mean that Shenhe is better than Hu Tao in Ganyu or whatever. It's just constellations in the order themselves there. So these are going to be some nice ones for you to pick up. Now, some ones that I'm not really fond of personally myself for any of the constellations here, we're going to have characters like Arataki Itto, which I'm going to throw in here. Listen, Arataki Itto, he's got the C1, he's got the C2. Where are we really kind of going? Let's check this one out here. Now, Arataki Itto, my man, my guy, the big man himself, the Demon King, as we like to call him around here. His constellations are just kind of like, right? You get 2 extra stacks of superlative super strength. After 1 second, he'll get another one. So, okay, it's fine, right? Each member who's Geo in your team is going to decrease the cooldown of this. There's so many other ways of running like a Geo DPS now that doesn't revolve around just mono Geo, that it's just like, are you gonna go and use these 2 constellations? Are they that big of a difference when you're maybe not using a team that could give you even more damage? You're making yourself stick to mono Geo at this point in time. So these 2 constellations for me, for Arataki Itto, really are kind of a miss here for me and not really much of a hit. A couple other ones that we want to talk about here. We have the likes of my man, Cyno, And then we also have a couple other ones here. I'm trying to remember. Eula we want to talk about, Yoimiya we want to talk about, Ayaka we want to talk about, as well as let's talk about these 3 characters. So we have so let's go with Eula. Eula here, I have a C6 Eula. Bless my heart, right? So for the first couple of constellations for Eula, she's got a couple of okay ones. The first one here, using your Grimheart stacks is going to give you a 30% physical damage bonus for 6 seconds, and you can get this stacking up to a maximum of 18-second duration, and you can get 2 Grimheart stacks off. So this could give you up to like a 60% physical damage bonus for 12 seconds, or if you keep consuming them afterwards, you keep that stack bonus up for a maximum of 18 seconds, and it kind of increase the duration over and over. C2 is not the greatest. I mean, it does have the benefits of like you can kind of turn your brain off with using press versus hold. As soon as you just get the 2 Grimheart stacks, you can use the hold version always. You don't have to think about how you're doing your rotation in comparison to like how much elemental burst energy you gain if you're going to be using the hold version. And it's going to make the cooldown too long to get the stacks back up to use the hold version again before your elemental burst duration's finished. This is a nice quality of life one, although if you kind of get the cooldown rotation for your Eula done, you figure it out, you master it, this one doesn't really matter that much, though this one is kind of nice for a Eula main who's trying to get some more physical damage out there. Eula being a character who's kind of left in the dust, though sadly right now, it is a good C1, but when we're comparing to all these other characters, I don't think I'd be picking up Eula C1 or C2 when it comes to this free constellation event here. We also have Cyno as well. Cyno, I mean, listen, okay, he's got some lovers, he's got some haters out there. The man is an aggravate monster. C1 here, listen, attack speed in Genshin just isn't that crazy of a stat. I've always wanted it to be the best stat ever, but with all the things that have hit lag in this game, you're never really getting the full benefit of attack speed in general. So this one just kind of is whatever there. It looks a little bit flashier, it seems a little bit cool, but it's not like a 20% damage increase. It's far less than that. C2 here, you get electro damage bonus increase of 10% for 4 seconds, and you can trigger it every 0.5 seconds up to maximum stacks of 5. This one is pretty nice. It does help you get a lot of damage bonus off for a constellation, but being a character who does some damage through damage and some damage through dendro related reactions a lot of the times, or other elemental reactions, like the electro damage bonus isn't the craziest thing, and damage bonus percent up nowadays in Genshin Impact, after we've got the likes of characters like Farina and Yelan, Katahara Kazuha giving damage bonus percents up as well, is one of the easiest ways to support a DPS character and getting their stat bonuses up. So unless you're like a big fan of getting him to C2 for that damage bonus, honestly, at the end of the day, for these kind of characters, it's not the craziest thing out there. Likewise, we have a Yoimiya, my favorite girl who I've never been able to play on this account, who I wouldn't be opposed to having a full rework at level 100 or something. The first C1 here, the runes Sax Frag lasts an additional 4 seconds. I mean, okay, and then like you defeat someone with Aurora's Blaze, you get 20% attack for 20 seconds. Listen, man, I mean, Aurora's Blaze and the Elemental Burst, we're talking about a character who uses Shimwa Rem set most of the time out here because the Elemental Burst plays such a low role in her doing damage that sometimes you don't even want to use it because you don't want to sit through the animation on this character. So really the C1 there is sort of useless, all things said and done. The C2 here, listen, when you do pyro damage, you gain a crit hit, you get 25% power damage for 6 seconds. And it can be triggered when she's not even on the battlefield, because you can trigger it with the Elemental Burst while she's off the battlefield. 25% power damage going after a character like Yoimiya who stacks damage percent ups in her team comp and in her build in so many different ways is not really worth a Constellation 2 either, unless you're a big main, you want to do it just for the same reasons as Eula and Cyno. It is honestly not my favorite thing. It is not my favorite thing. all things said and done. Now the last one here, who I don't know if we're going to keep her here or not, is going to be Kamisato Ayaka. Near and dear to my heart, Cryo main that I am. Kamisato Ayaka has some pretty cool constellations, but are they the C1 and the C2? So C1 here, when your damage hits the opponent, listen dude, this is the biggest joke of a constellation in all of Genshin Impact. This constellation might as well not even exist. It is so bad. 50% chance of reducing the cooldown of your elemental skill. No thank you. All right, for C1 we're passing on that. C2 here is pretty cool. All right, when you use Sometsu, your elemental burst here, you're able to do 2 smaller elemental bursts basically. They do 20% of the original storm's damage. So this is very unique, unlike the other ones that we just talked about, because it's basically giving you 20% damage bonus. But unlike the other 2 characters, or the other 3 or 4 characters that we just talked about, that have like pyro damage plus 25%, or electro damage plus 50%, or physical damage plus 30% stacking, the ability for her to actually send out another skill that does 20% of the original's damage is a little bit different. So it is pretty good, and I actually do like her. If you're like an Ayaka main, you're still using her in 2025 out there, it is a pretty nice damage increase to one of her hardest hitting skills ever. We're gonna talk about Kokomi real quick. Now Kokomi's got a C1 and a C2. Now the C1 here is when you don your ceremonial garment, right, by Nereid's Ascension, which is going to be your elemental burst here, it is going to increase the normal attack combo to 30% of our max HP as hydro damage, which is pretty cool, right? If you're in there trying to do big damage with Kokomi, stacking max HP buffs, double hydro, you want her to do the big damage there, this is gonna help you out. I mean, 30% of our max HP as a multiplier is pretty nice. All right, but C2 here, Kokomi gains the following health bonuses in regards to characters with 50% or less health during the following methods. Karaga's Oath, 4.5% of Kokomi's max HP. In Nereid's Ascension, normal and charge attacks, 0.6% of Kokomi's max HP. So if you go in here and look at Nereid's Ascension, it already has some max HP, but adding 30% and then additional percent bonuses with C1 and C2 are pretty nice. Gaining access to additional HP scaling on your charge attack in normal attack is quite nice with both the C1 and the C2. Now, if you're Kokomi main, I don't know why you're watching this video, because as soon as you saw that she was on the banner and you're not C1 and you're not C2, and you're just like, I want to use this character in everything that I can, then you'd probably be right up here. But the C2 isn't really nice, I should say, as the C1 is. So if you're a Kokomi main, no matter how big you are, I would stop at the C1. You don't really need this, because 4.5% max health and 0.6%, just go for that 30% right there. Just get this right here, and you'll be doing pretty solid for yourself. Now, another character that we need to talk about is going to be one of my personal faves for characters to pick up if they are heading into the hyper bloom or just bloom direction in general, which is going to be Baizhu. Now, Baizhu's constellations are pretty decent. So the first one here, gaining an additional charge on your elemental skill, does make this man just like healing extraordinaire, right? He's just going to be applying stuff. He's going to be applying a Dendro a lot more often. He is going to help you out pretty substantially if you gain access to an additional charge right there. But the biggest one here is Constellation 2. So this is for your active character, right? When they hit nearby opponents with their attacks, Baizhu will be doing basically some follow-up attacks as well, and also healing on top of that. This is really the big one here, okay? This is awesome. I love this a ton, and it makes him a very substantial Dendro applier in a ton of ways, because this can trigger once every 5 seconds. It gives you additional healing, it gives you a little bit of Dendro damage, but it's really the Dendro application that we're here for. So getting the combination of the C1 and the C2 allows you to be even more sustaining than before, because you get extra healing from an extra skill, and you get extra healing from the C2, and then even more Dendro application because you get an extra use of your elemental skill, and then you get free Dendro application every 5 seconds. And that's where I would tell you to kind of like pick him up and put him down. Just at C2 is a big one for a lot of Baizhu users out there. Now we do have one of the OG characters, almost old enough to be an original, all right? Klee, very quick, very done here. Listen, we don't want to talk about C1, it is oof. But Klee does have some uses nowadays. If you're a Klee lover, you want to use her somewhere, with a 23% defense shred from Jumpty Dumpty mines, which is kind of amazing out there, right? 23% defense shred is sick. So there's some uses out there for like reverse melt teams or something where you go ahead and you use her. There's a lot of things you can do with 23% defense shred. It is relatively good. I don't think I personally would go out and get a 23% defense shred for my Klee C2. However, it is a pretty good one. I just definitely would not go for the C1, but the C2 is definitely something that you can think about as well. Now, child, very short, very sweet. Constellation 1, dude. Listen, getting 20% cooldown off of the elemental skill transformation, it's not a make or break constellation. Going from 0 to 1 here isn't going to be awesome. It might let you get like a couple extra attacks out, right? And apply some Hydro before you got to go back into bow form. That's not worth it in my opinion. In Constellation 2, defeating enemies and getting energy back with your child. Listen, those are both dumpster fire. Those are both dumpster fire constellations, and we're going to put him at the very end of Mess C1, Mess C2. Now, we do have another Hydro character that can hopefully help us out here. And Kamisato Ayato, Constellation 1 here, is going to increase his damage by 40% against people with 50% or less HP. If you are an Ayato main, this can help you in some of the more time trial-y content, right? Because once you get them to the 50% HP mark, well, you're going to be doing more damage under that. So the second half of the boss fight is going to, be quicker than the first half. But it does suffer from the same things that we said these characters suffer from, like Eula and Yoimiya. It's a damage percent bonus. He's a Hydro character. There's a lot of ways to boost Hydro characters' damage with the likes of like the Cinder City set came out, right? We have so many ways. We have so many ways with supports to just buff up damage bonus nowadays. So the Constellation 2 here, World Source, maximum stack count is increased to 5. And then when Ayato has at least 3 stacks, his max HP is increased by 50%. This one, now we're talking, right? Because these two things work super well with him. We were just talking about the downside of boosting damage percent bonuses and how that is a way that other supports tend to boost damage for your main carries in Genshin Impact nowadays. This, though, it is very hard to give someone a big max HP increase. And this does two things. It gives you 5 stack limit, and it's going to give you a 50% max HP increase. And if you just go in here and look at the damage percent bonus, it's 0.56% max HP per stack at level 1, and this goes up way higher once you level it up. But you're also not gaining just this, you'll be gaining 5 stack maximum and a 50% health boost, which is just free damage. It's just free damage everywhere. So if you're an Ayato lover, the Constellation 2 is good. Constellation 1's kind of fine, but the Constellation 2 is nice for him, and he is going to be one of the best characters that you could pick a C2 specifically for. Now, we do have 2 other ones, and I'm shaking my head because I have this guy at C6 and this guy here as well. So Albedo, man, oh my god. Albedo, how the mighty have fallen, but he does have a good constellation. So Albedo here, his first constellation, the C1, Flower of Eden, generating energy for Albedo. He's got a 40 cost burst, dude. This does not matter at all. This is almost a useless constellation on him. The Constellation 2 here, though, does do a very cool thing, and I think it's a very good constellation. The problem is, I just don't think it matters that much, because this is going to add a defense element to his elemental burst. So if you go look at his elemental skill scales off defense, his elemental burst scales off of attack. However, if you have his Constellation 2, his elemental burst will scale off of both of his attack as well as his defense due to the effect right here, and the stacks up to 4 times, and the stacks basically instantaneously. The problem is Albedo, as much as I love this man, is just basically unusable in most content a lot of the times because his flower just gets blown up by every little thing. It's just not even fun. It's not even fun to use him. So with that being said, I think he does have a good Constellation 2 if you're an Albedo enjoyer. I just think it's kind of impossible to be an Albedo enjoyer nowadays. And so I'm going to put him into the Meh C1 as well as Meh C2 tier, which means we need to talk about his friend, his Animo counterpart. And I say counterpart because it's an inside joke between me and one of my friends because I was Albedo, and I C6'd Albedo, he C6 Xiao. Okay, all right. The C1 for Xiao getting an extra charge of his elemental skill. It's fine. It helps you generate particles. It's okay. It's free damage. It's cool. The C2 here, when he's not on the field, he gets energy recharge 25%. Both of these things help you basically build him with less energy recharge. That's kind of really all they do. And so at the end of the day, a C1/C2 Xiao is almost going to be the same strength as a C0 Xiao. And so I'm going to make both the C1 and the C2. I'm going to put him in the Meh. I'm gonna put him right in the Meh tier. I'm over here looking like I have my second camera on. I don't, but that's where I'm gonna put them. Now, the next one here, Yae Miko, is someone that I also do have and have used a lot at Constellation. I think I'm at Constellation 2. Constellation 1 here is gonna give you energy back every time you use your Elemental Burst. And the Elemental Burst is very expensive. It is 90 energy. And so if you have C1, it chops off, I think, 24 energy if you detonate 3 of your Sessho Sakura. So this knocks down like a 66 energy cost Elemental Burst, which is pretty significant. And it doesn't actually reduce the cost. So if you're using it with Raiden Shogun or someone else who cares about the costs of your Elemental Burst, it still costs 90, but you're just getting refunded 24. But every consecutive one, basically, you just got to get 66 more energy back, and that helps out a great deal. The big one here, Fox's Moon Call. This one's like a quality of life thing for Yae Miko. The Sakura start at level 2 when created. Their max levels increased to 4. Basically, instead of going up to level 3 like usual, they go up 1 more level. So you get like a little extra bonus damage. And remind yourselves they level up based on how many are out, all right? But this is fine. It's just like an extra level, right? You can see at level 1, it ups the damage percent like a fair amount, right? It's pretty decent. But the big thing about it is that it's going to increase their attack range by 60%. And this is the biggest quality of life change that I think kind of exists. So not only does it give you free damage, but one of the lamest things in Genshin Impact when you're putting, structures down in the abyss or just in general is the monsters just walking away from it or not being next to it. And the fact that 60% range is absolutely massive. It's huge. You can kind of just map things with it. You just put them down in like a triangle formation and you're just gonna be zapping stuff non-stop with her. So I think her C2 is definitely worth it if you're already at C1. And if you're a Yae Miko lover, you're gonna absolutely love having that Constellation 2 in your back pocket. And finally, we're gonna tackle probably one of the best characters for Constellations on here. This is gonna be none other than the Wanderer. Constellation 1, when in the wind favored state, the attack speed is increased, but additionally, the wind arrows followed by his passive get an additional 25% of his attack as damage, which is very nice. So we talked about attack speed before. Not always the craziest thing. You're not getting the full benefit from it because of hit lag, but remember, you're kind of just doing range attacks with him, so attack speed's a little bit better that way. But also it does do 25% additional attack as damage. And this is different than what we talked about, the downsides of like Eula and Yoimiya's and Cyno's and not Tartaglia, but all the characters that just get a % damage bonus increase. It's closer to something like Kamisato Ayaka's, who just does an attack that's 20% of the damage that your original attack did. This is just adding a multiplier. This is something like a Shenhe Quill or a Yunjin elemental buff, right? This is something that's going to be very good for your damage. So you're attacking faster and you're getting free damage that's going to interact very well with every attack buff, every damage percent buff. All of that stuff works very well with both parts of this constellation. Constellation 2, when you're in the wind favored state, which we want to be, your damage is going to get a damage percent increase per point difference between the amount of max points contrasted with the present capacity when using the skill. Basically, at the end of the day, if you're doing your rotation, you're going to go up and down and up and down, and you can have a maximum of 200% damage bonus. So not only is this like an absolutely wildly massive damage percent bonus, so much so that you might go, but what about the downside you just talked about with damage percent bonus things? This is massive. It's crazy high. But the other thing is it's a very self-sufficient way for him to boost the damage percent bonuses of this additional attack percent damage bonus in the attack speed. So it works exceptionally well in a kit like the Wanderers, and the fact that he's an animo character as well also lessens the downside of having something like a big damage percent bonus buff, because in a lot of animo characters, you might have a couple of other characters, like maybe like a Farina or a Yelan or something, to give you damage percent bonuses, but a lot of the times you're buffing your damage up in like other weird, unique ways with characters like Faruzan, right? Who are just adding crit chance, crit damage. They might have something like a C2 gene in there, right? That's going with animal resistant shredder for you as well. Maybe some additional movement speed and attack speed. But animal resist shredder, was that for C4 of 40%? There's other things that animo DPSs want from their supports than just the traditional damage percent bonuses that you'll see other elemental DPSs want from those supports from time to time. So this is going to be a fantastic constellation for him. And well, if you're a Wanderer main and you're C1 and you want to be a Wanderer main, I cannot think of anything better for you to pick than that Constellation 2. But also the C1 is a pretty significant buff for him as well. So I would put him definitely C2, but borderline C1 and C2 at the same time. And this is going to be our list right here. It's going to, well, I like it a lot. You let me know what you think about it down below, and I will catch you guys doing something, man. I'm not sure.